In a Renaissance rendition of the end of the world, beefy angels and swole mythological characters fight over the fate of burly, reanimated corpses.
Femininity in the post-apocalypse.
Hello there, you eschatological empresses of the end times. You're listening to Femininity in the Post-Apocalypse, a feminist exploration of dystopian media. I'm your host, Klaire Lockheart, and if I were a dinosaur, I would be a triceratops. I also spend too much time painting in isolation in my studio, and it may have warped my ability to determine what's appropriate to share publicly and what thoughts I should keep to myself. Anyway, I created this podcast so I can connect with wonderful people while consuming apocalyptic media. My fantastic guest and I are going to examine The Last Judgment, completed by Michelangelo Buonarroti in 1541. We'll chat about the mural, the depiction of women, and then we'll evaluate the artwork using the Maenad-O-Meter. Finally, you'll get to meet the next recipient of the Honorary Doctor of Dystopian Studies degree from the Unaccredited College of Klaire. Thank you for being part of Femininity in the Post-Apocalypse by listening to the show. My wonderful guest is photographer Aaron C Packard, and his whole life is one big dark room. He recently launched Photo Lab No. 7, a photography lab specializing in processing film, creating prints, and other photography malarkey. You most likely will remember him from previous episodes of this program when we covered Blade Runner or The Terminator. But you might also recognize him from last Halloween when he dressed up like Beetlejuice. If you, yourself, are strange and unusual and need film developed or photos printed, visit his new website, photolab7.com, spelled FOTOLABNO7.com. Welcome to the show, Aaron.
Why, thank you. It's great to be here.
It's always great to have you as a guest because you are my favorite person in the universe.
Aw, you're mine too.
Well, I probably should mention to our friends who may not know us in person that we are married, so you don't have to report us to the Femininity in the Post-Apocalypse HR department. But Aaron, I'm glad I could tear you away from your dark room to be on the show today.
Oh, yeah. It's getting dark in there. Definitely.
You have been doing so much work with Photo Lab No. 7. And one event you did earlier this month was you took a fun group of people on a photo walk.
Yes. Yeah, we had a little birthday celebration for me in the opening of Photo Lab number 7, and also had a big stash of old and expired film to give away and get rid of. So we did a little thing called Old and Expired. Went and had a photo walk around downtown Vermilion, and then everybody brought film back here, and I processed it up and just sent everybody scans the other day.
This was an incredibly fun event. And for our friends listening who weren't able to attend, can they see photos of your photo walk?
We have a few up on our social media, and then we will be doing some more now that we have all the photos that everybody took. So we'll do some other little flip slideshow, something or others.
So I'm asking about your social media like I'm not the person who runs it. But Aaron, tell our friends where they can find you on what social media platforms.
Well, they can find Photo Lab number 7 on Instagram and Facebook and TikTok and Blue Sky. Photo Lab number 7 is FOTOLABNO7.
Thank you. Aaron, we've been watching a lot of 80s movies this season, and so we're going to take a break from Gen X revelry to take a gander at a work of art made during the Italian Renaissance.
Ooh.
We're going to chat about The Last Judgment, or Il Giudizio Universale by Michelangelo Buonarroti. Aaron, do you recall the first time you encountered this artwork?
Definitely the first time I really had to look at it was one of my early art history classes when I first went to college. Yep, very exciting class, I'm sure.
So, I saw this mural about a decade ago when I traveled to Italy to study Renaissance art in grad school. Many of our friends have already heard this story, but unfortunately, my strongest memory of seeing this painting in person was getting groped by strangers in the extremely crowded Sistine Chapel.
Oof, that's not fun.
At first, I assumed I was getting bumped into on accident because I'm tragically Midwestern and there were a lot of people. Plus, I wasn't paying attention to my surroundings because I was looking up at the ceiling. The second time it happened, I thought someone was trying to pick my pockets, but I remember I was wearing a dress that clearly didn't have pockets at the time. And so I left. At least none of my classmates were repeatedly grabbed, but they convinced me to give the Sistine Chapel a second chance. And I'm glad I was traveling with nice people so I could actually look at the art, but I'm still irritated that I needed a human shield to view the work. Long story short, it's difficult to see The Last Judgment in person. It's also tricky to find good images online, but the best photo I could find is on Wikipedia.
Yeah, actually, that one is not too bad.
I think it has something to do with the company that sponsored the restoration restricting photo usage.
Mhm.
But I also recommend that our friends should look up a print by Niccolo della Casa on the Met's website, which he created in 1548 before the mural was censored.
Mm. Yes, it does have some interesting censoring that took place.
Aaron, I know I don't need to tell you that looking at artwork in person is ideal so we can experience the colors, textures, scale, and context. But there are some advantages to viewing reproductions. I enjoy the lack of crowds.
Mm.
Plus, I can eat or drink. Aaron, what did we have to drink when we viewed The Last Judgment together?
Oh, we had to stick to a little bit of an Italian thing, and we had some Prosecco.
We did.
Yes.
Speaking of beverages, the Maenads from Greek mythology had a reputation for drinking wine, and I bring them up because after we discuss this artwork, we'll rate it on the Maenad-O-Meter.
The Maenad-O-Meter.
I also want to mention that our main focus will be the artwork itself. We're not going to do a deep dive into the artist's biography or the context in which it was made. We'll talk about how we're experiencing the work now in a way that is similar to how we approach books and movies on this show, with a focus on people of marginalized genders. Aaron, I'm going to describe this artwork for you and our friends listening, but I'm inviting you to jump in at any time you have insight, need clarification, or if you want to crack a joke.
There's a number of cracks in this image,
Yes,
and
indeed.
not just in the plaster. So
Oh,
one of the things that is great about now is like having this version that we can see online. Is because when I originally saw this, because I didn't see it in person, I had to see it in Jansen's art history
mm.
textbook. So it was like you had a one-page version and then maybe like two or three close-up images, and I think those would have been from before it was restored. So I'm sure it wasn't as explicit as it
Ah.
is now. Ha ha ha.
Is Jansen's the art history book that didn't have a single woman artist until the 1980s?
I believe that is correct. Yes.
Ah. Anyway, the title of this work is called The Last Judgment, and it depicts the Christian apocalypse. It's a mural, which means that it was painted directly on the wall in the Sistine Chapel in the Vatican. It's 13.7 meters tall by 12 meters wide, which is almost 45 by 40 feet. The basic shape is a vertical rectangle, but there are two arches on the top edge, kind of like the outline of the McDonald's logo. And
Oh, so it's not just a big butt?
and just like McDonald's, this painting is full of unbelievable beef. It's a huge composition full of incredibly muscular people, swole mythological characters, and burly reanimated corpses.
Oh, yeah, very swole.
The bottom edge of the painting contains green earth on the left, plus a portal to hell on the right, separated by a small body of blue water. However, the vast majority of the composition is the blue sky, which is jam-packed with floating figures, a few clouds, and more butts than Tina Belcher could handle.
Most definitely.
The artist who created this apocalyptic scene was Michelangelo Buonarroti. I'd like to take a moment to ask for forgiveness on my pronunciations. We tend to pronounce names the way our teachers said them. Michelangelo is common too, and I want to mention that variations in pronunciation are okay. Michelangelo worked on this mural starting in 1536 and finished it in 1541. He did most of the work by himself because he was a cantankerous man in his 60s and he didn't get along well with others. He was a grouchy sculptor and hated painting, but I get the feeling he enjoyed complaining about the work. When he painted the chapel ceiling 30 years earlier, he wrote a poem about what a literal pain in the butt it was to create, since he had to stand on scaffolding and stretch upward to apply pigment, which dripped in his face. He wrote, "My haunches are grinding into my guts. My poor ass strains to work as a counterweight. Every gesture I make is blind and aimless." What a lovely poem, huh?
Oh, yes. Yes, so lovely.
Painting is labor intensive, and working on a large work of art for an extended period of time is painful. I finished up 2 5-foot tall paintings about a month ago, and my back, hips, and wrists still hurt. You definitely know how much I like complaining about about all the work.
Oh, yeah. We all put ourselves through torture for our art.
The trope of the suffering artist lives again.
Oh, yes.
I've also helped provide small amounts of manual labor for the mural on the wall team based in Vermilion, but I don't have any experience in the fresco technique Michelangelo used for the Last Judgment. This is buon fresco, which means that the paint was applied to the wall before the plaster dried. This allowed the watery pigments to seep into the damp plaster and bind with it, creating a durable mural that can last for centuries. Michelangelo only painted on dry plaster to add details or make corrections later. Unfortunately, some of these details and shadows may have been erased when the Sistine Chapel was restored in the 1980s, but the restoration allows us to see the vivid colors that were previously hidden by centuries of smoke and grime. Do you think some of that smoke was caused by really old popes having their birthday parties in the Sistine Chapel and all of the candles on their big cakes?
Oh, yeah, sure. I think a lot of it came from all the incense they were using to cover up how bad everybody smelled.
The eschatological theme for this painting is Judgment Day, as interpreted by Christians during the Renaissance. This composition was commissioned by a pope who is the leader of the Catholic Church. Michelangelo almost weaseled his way out of this project when Pope Clement VII died, but Paul III hired him. The artwork illustrates what they thought it would look like when Jesus would return to earth and judge everyone for salvation or damnation, and this is the moment they believed when the dead will rise for judgment.
So, like the first zombie apocalypse?
I think this might be some of the earliest zombie apocalypse fan art.
Yeah, that just kind of adds to the whole Tina Belcher attraction thing, I think, because,
But
And zombies.
yeah, oh. It took Michelangelo about 4 years to create this massive mural with over 300 Herculean characters floating in the sky.
Oh, so like 300. So they were like the Spartans, especially, I mean, with all the sprayed on abs, it kind of works, right?
Tonight we dine in
You
hell.
know. Oh,
Okay, so it took him about 4 years to create this mural. There's over 300 Spartanish characters floating in the sky, heralding the return of their Messiah or being dragged down to hell.
hmm.
It's a pretty impressive accomplishment considering that the artist was a turtle.
Very true. Very true. And it's interesting how all of these really muscular bodies are kind of portly, yet muscular.
Talk about unrealistic standards of beauty.
I know. I don't know how you could achieve that dense core that has like absolutely no transition. It's sort of a SpongeBob SquarePants overall physique.
Now, I'm a huge nerd, and I don't want to admit to how long it took me to count all the people in this colossal painting, but I had to because most sources usually state there are, quote, over 300 figures.
So, how many did you find?
Well, let me build up to that reveal.
Okay,
Because
okay.
the most specific count I could find was in Skin, Bones, and Dust, Self-Portraits in Michelangelo's Last Judgment, written by Bernardine Barnes, who stated there are over 360 characters. I counted 367.
Hmm.
But I was working from photographs. This includes full bodies, people peeking in within crowds, and a couple hands emerging from the ground in classic zombie fashion.
Yes.
I double checked my count with the copy print by Niccolo della Casa, who did omit some figures and details, but he didn't add any. If our already nerdy friends think that sipping wine and counting burly dudes in an old painting is a fun way to spend an evening, I hope they'll reach out to tell me how many people they counted.
Yes, absolutely.
Overall, this painting looks like an epic advertisement for every single He-Man action figure ever invented.
Including the women because they're using the same He-Man physique.
The people are beefy.
Yes.
Michelangelo was heavily influenced by Greco-Roman artwork, plus he was a fan of buff dudes.
Really? You really can't tell. Yeah.
Aaron, did you see what I did there? Buff meaning muscular
Ah, yes.
and
Yes.
nude.
Nude. Yes. Yes. Har, har, har.
I'm going to break down the composition to point out significant characters, but I know I won't be able to cover everything, much like the censors attempted to do after the artist's death.
Yes. And some very bad work at that they did.
Let's begin with the central figures that are backlit with a yellow oval near the top of the wall, right below where the two semicircles meet the ceiling. The largest figure is an extremely muscular man with reddish-brown hair sitting on a cloud. His hips are daintily draped in lavender fabric, which wraps around his left shoulder. He's looking toward his left, and his right hand is raised as though he's about to give a mighty high five to one of his airborne bros.
There's a few that are waiting for it, I think.
He has spots on his hands and feet indicating stigmata, which means he's Jesus, who is the Messiah in the Christian religion, much like Muad'Dib is for my Dune nerds.
Well, and he also does have his tiny little slice on his chest.
Ah. Thank you for the extra iconography. You must have done well in that art history class.
I did okay. I did okay.
When Nino Serini, a cardinal secretary, saw the painting, he exclaimed, "Jesus Christ! Where is his beard?" Okay, that might not be an
Shaved.
Yeah, that might not be an exact quote, but even though Michelangelo's depiction appears a bit like the ancient Greek god Apollo, I will argue in his defense that Christian artists didn't really start drawing Jesus with a beard until the 4th century, and it took a couple hundred years to catch on in the iconography.
Yes, yes.
This was not the only complaint viewers had about this painting, but it's a good place to start. However, no one complained that this Jesus is white.
Of course.
Most of the people in this painting are quite pale, and there are a surprising amount of blondes for a religion that originated in the Middle East.
Yes, yes, I definitely see that.
Immediately to Jesus's right is a woman wearing a long-sleeved light red tunic, a white headscarf, and her lap is draped with blue fabric. She, like everyone else, is barefoot. This is Jesus's mom, Mary, and she is turning away from Jesus's armpit like deodorant wasn't invented yet.
Yes, hence all the incense they have to burn. Right.
There's a little bit of blue sky that surrounds this pair, and Michelangelo used the most expensive blue pigment he could because he was bitter that he had to make this painting and he wanted to make the Pope pay.
Yes, definitely.
However, his pettiness paid off because the high quality pigments and amount he used make the colors vibrant. Jesus and Mary are encircled by over 50 people, many of whom are saints or other notable characters. To our left, there are 3 extremely muscular nude people who are surprisingly not the patron saints of steroids. At the center, a bearded man turns his head to the left, and he wears a furry pelt draped over his shoulders, indicating that he is Saint John the Baptist. Michelangelo originally depicted him with full frontal nudity, but a different artist was hired by the church to paint over the naughty bits when people like Nino Cerini complained that there were too many dongs.
Too many dongs.
The censorship, which was left in place by the restoration team, makes it look like he covered his junk with a tiny wig.
That'd be so itchy.
It looks like John was given a small fake beard with straps, but because he already had facial hair, he chose to wear it like a scratchy thong.
Yes, yes. This is a very jaunty little thong hairpiece that he has going on there, yes.
In front of Jesus, by his feet, there are a few more nude dudes. On the lower right, there's a brawny bald man with a large gray beard straddling a cloud, and he's holding a knife in his right hand and a flayed human skin in his left. The common interpretation is that this is Saint Bartholomew with his flayed flesh, even though the saggy skin doesn't look like the intact man. The flayed man has short hair and a little scruffy brown beard. About 100 years ago, scholars noticed that this skinned man's face bears a striking resemblance to Michelangelo and could be a self-portrait. But no one noted this when the painting was revealed on October 31st, almost 500 years ago. Radiating around these central characters, there are dozens of ripped figures floating in the sky. In the center, there's a small pack of wingless angels with names like Blast, Hard Cheese, and Butch, Deadlift, holding books and tooting on long horns.
Yes, and I think there's one who's like not sure if he's supposed to be tooting on the horn. Then there's like ones that are, it's like the horn is going to be a weapon, and it's just they're just really blowing.
To their right, there is an unclothed bodybuilder sporting a troubled expression mid-facepalm as though he's a substitute teacher who is hired to cover elementary music on recorder day.
Yeah, that looks about right.
But the serpent biting his thigh and the 2 demons pulling on his legs are probably less headache-inducing than second graders armed with cheap woodwinds.
Yes. I remember making that cacophony slightly as a small child.
It's probably a lot more fun to make that ruckus than to have to listen to it every
Yes.
day.
Although I do remember I wasn't really able to practice that much because it was just too annoying to everybody at home.
In the lower left corner, there is a small patch of green land, and the dead are rising from their graves because Bruce Campbell didn't say every single little tiny syllable when retrieving the Necronomicon.
Klaatu Verata necktie?
No.
No, neck to
N-
Nick two?
Nickel.
Sure. Oh no, we've raised the Deadites. No.
There are a few shrouded skeletons hoping to be cast as Skeletor's stunt double. Gray-skinned corpses that could beat up Hades for his lunch money.
Mm-hmm.
And freshly dead men who died from embarrassment the one time they skipped leg day.
Yes.
These reanimated brutes are pulled skyward by diaphanously draped angels named Chuck, Slam Chest, and Lump Beef Broth.
Some of them don't really look like they're too happy about being woken up. They look a bit grumpy.
Just 5 more minutes. Moving upward, there's a crowd of pumped up people, including some identifiable women.
Oh, wow.
I know that I complain endlessly about movies where all the characters look exactly the same, but I would like to pass on that same judgment for this painting.
Well, they all do have the exact same body.
Michelangelo certainly preferred a very specific body type, and he gave it to everyone. It doesn't matter if the subject was old, young, dead, alive, male, or female. Everyone looks like they were poured from the same Incredible Hulk plastic action figure mold.
Yes, they do. Those ladies have got some guns.
In the semicircle on the left, at the top of the wall, there's a team of jocks hoisting a cross.
Is this where CrossFit comes from?
Oh, I bet you're right. And there's another group of burly bros carrying a white stone pillar.
Well, I'm not going to talk about what that represents.
I'm bringing this column with me to heaven, and that's all I need.
And this chair.
And this ladder.
And this thermos.
Oh, I was listing things in the painting.
Oh, I was just going.
Sorry, I was being a jerk. Allow me to continue.
Okay.
Along the right side of the painting, there's another huge crowd, including Slate, Slab Rock, Gristle McThornbody, Big, McLarge Huge, and Saint Catherine.
And she's more buff than the rest of them.
Yes, Catherine, who is bent over at the waist, is holding a broken wheel covered in spikes. She is the only woman dressed in a sleeveless tunic, and her outfit looks out of place because Michelangelo originally depicted her nude, but after he died, Pope Pius IV hired Daniele da Volterra to chisel out and replace the original plaster so he could repaint Catherine's body, fully dressed. Furthermore, he used tempera paint to add drapery to over 20 nude figures, and this earned him the nickname Il Bregatone, which means the breeches maker. So if you paint over naughty bits, you get a mean nickname?
Yeah.
Aaron, speaking of plastering over things some people find offensive.
Yes.
Do you know what time it is?
Time for our sponsor break?
No! I got you. It's time for me to introduce the most important vocabulary term ever.
Ooh, what is the most important vocabulary term ever?
Intergluteal cleft.
Ah, yes, the intergluteal cleft.
When I was first researching Michelangelo's painting for that history class, I knew that I couldn't include the term butt crack in my writing. Bumline sounded a little fancier, and
Mm.
Cleftal Horizon felt like a reference only for my friends who watch the IT crowd. Anyway, intergluteal cleft is an academic way to refer to a butt crack, and I want to share it because our friends listening shouldn't have to go to grad school to learn such a fabulous term.
No, no, they should be able to get that fully on their own,
Unlike us.
unlike us.
Unlike us who learned it while earning our MFAs.
Yes, yes.
Anyway, friends, you're welcome. So, Il Bregatone was hired by the Pope to censor genitals and intergluteal clefts that upset the male clergy and their pals. They complained that the painting was too erotic, and I want you to imagine I said that in a Zap Brannigan voice.
What's that learning disability I have?
Sexlexia. Personally, I don't find scores of jacked men floating in the sky after the world ends titillating, but I digress. Popes kept hiring artists to balderize the fresco over the next 200 years. One of Michelangelo's loudest critics was a priest named Biagio de Cesena. Because Cesena complained about the artwork non-stop while Michelangelo was working on it, the artist decided to include his likeness in the fresco in the lower right corner, where demons drag people to the underworld.
Yes, and he does not seem to be reacting as much to what's happening to him as he should be.
No. At the center of the bottom edge, there's a boat, and the ferryman from Greek mythology, played by the jolly green giant's evil twin, uses his oar to paddle the damned. All the way over to the right corner, there's a very nude elderly man with a physique only found in Rob Liefeld's dreams.
You can't see his feet.
Oh, really? Oh, wow. This guy is Minos, the judge of the underworld in Greek mythology. Michelangelo gave him the ears of a donkey to show that he's a fool, and he also gave him the face of the complainer Cesena. Because Cesena hated all the visible genitals so much, Michelangelo painted a snake biting Cesena's penis. When Cesena whined to his boss about this addition to the mural, the Pope responded that his jurisdiction doesn't extend into hell. Speaking of eternal agony, Aaron, do you know what time it is?
Is it time for our sponsors?
It is. Femininity in the Post-Apocalypse is brought to you by the Unaccredited College of Klaire. Is it an affordable art school with actual lessons? Is it a long-running joke? I can't tell you what to believe, but I can tell you to head to patreon.com/Klaire Lockheart, which is spelled patreon.com/KLAIRE LOCKHEART. Welcome back to the show, my wonderful friends. Thank you again for listening. I want to quickly remind everyone that the goal of femininity in the post-apocalypse is to discuss dystopian media through a 21st century lens, because we're aware that people of marginalized genders are often missing or mistreated in doomsday narratives. Unfortunately, they're also missing from everyday records, and I'm pretty worried about our ability to point this out in the United States, especially concerning all the federal censorship where the government is actively removing documentation of trans people, women, and people of color.
Mm. Yes.
Anyway,
Mm.
my hope is that if we can illuminate this shortcoming in end of the world media, it can help improve our real lives. Before we discuss the bodies created by Michelangelo, I want to be clear that we're not disparaging anyone's body type. But this is a painting, and the artist had complete control over how he depicted the subjects. Michelangelo was influenced by ancient Greek and Roman artists, and they believed men's bodies were the most beautiful. Plus, he carried on the tradition of male artists determining and illustrating what they considered the ideal form.
Yes.
In this case, the artist thought the ideal form was a lumpy, masculine body carved out of a cube of meat with a tiny head.
And excessively smooth. Did they not have body hair back then? I mean, there's not even armpit hair, there's not pubic hair, there's nothing on anybody. There's some eyebrows, they have hair
Some
on their head,
beards.
but I think there was some waxing or something going on because I didn't think their razors were that good back then. So,
Anyway, the way Michelangelo painted the women is unique compared to his peers. He pretty much drew his ideal rugged man, but sliced a Nerf ball in half and attached the two rigid conical parts to the chest for breasts.
going in any direction he deemed fit. Nothing to do with gravity
Or anatomy.
or anatomy.
I would argue that the way he painted, drew, and sculpted breasts is unsuccessful.
I would agree. I concur.
But if we take into context other European art from the Middle Ages and Renaissance, men overwhelmingly didn't know what breasts look like or where they were located.
Yes, you are correct.
Almost all artists in this era were men because women were systemically prevented from studying art.
Mm-hmm.
There were a few exceptions, but they were incredibly rare. Anyway, Michelangelo's depictions of breasts are hilarious, but they're not much worse than portrayals by the other Ninja Turtles.
Very true. Very true. All the Ninja Turtles did not know their breasts.
Well, they're not even mammals.
That's true.
The aspect about his representation of women that is unusual is that the women are strong.
True. True. That is a very good point.
It's not a secret that he used men for all his models.
Obviously.
Now, now I have read many books and articles examining Michelangelo's art, and I've talked to other artists and art historians, and there are many reactions to his depictions of women. Some believe that Michelangelo hated women so much that he couldn't stand to paint them. And yes, his attitude toward women wasn't great. When originally commissioned to create The Last Judgment, he was told to make it with oils, which he didn't want to do. He responded, and I quote, well, the translation anyway, "Oil painting is a woman's art and only fit for lazy, well-to-do people."
Hmm. Okay.
I've also heard the argument that Michelangelo liked dudes so much he couldn't bear to bring himself to depict feminine women.
Mhm.
But that's not right either. During the Renaissance, women weren't seen as people by the church and men in general. Women lived cloistered lives and weren't permitted the same freedoms as men. Girls were married off, or they were sent to nunneries or brothels. These decisions were most often made by their fathers. As adults, women were either mothers, nuns, or sex workers. Anything else was unusual. In art, there was a strong dichotomy of how male and female bodies were depicted. Men could be strong and active, and women were shown as passive and demure. This is a trend that permeates our culture to this day. If you think of any big corporation superhero franchise, the men get the chiseled bodies of Olympians, but the women are small yet busty.
Mhm.
Think of Superman compared to Supergirl.
Yeah, and in Marvel, all of our movies these days, we have the all the Iron Men and the Hulks and the this and the that, and then you have Black Widow,
Mm,
who's yeah,
her superpower is wearing a tight black outfit.
yes, and throwing people with her crotch.
Aw. Now, Michelangelo was unusual because in the Sistine Chapel he painted the women equally as strong as the men. In a culture where women were nowhere equal to men, where they believed that men were the standard and women were the deformed deviant, I would argue that painting women equal to the men was transgressive, and the male viewers didn't like it.
That's a very good point.
If we examine the censorship, which was commissioned by the Pope and executed by male artists to appease other men, almost all of it was to cover the dongs and intergluteal clefts of the men. Michelangelo didn't depict any lady bits, and none of the women's breasts were censored except for St. Catherine's. There were priests and poets who were appalled because she was bent over, and they said it looked like the male saint in the background was about to bone her. But I'm going to argue that she looked too active and it made them uncomfortable.
Hmm. Yes, I think you are correct.
Renaissance men overall didn't object to paintings of lusty nude women at all. I think Catherine's act of hoisting a heavy chunk of wheel made her appear too active, and that's what made them uneasy. There are other completely nude women in this painting that the menfolk didn't object to. Now, this might be me doing a little wishful thinking, and I don't know how intentional this is, but Michelangelo illustrated the women equal to the men in this mural. I like it, even though the artist wouldn't give me the time of day because I'm a woman and I paint with oils. It's incredibly rare to see depictions of strong women. The only contemporary example I can think of that compares to this artwork is that episode of Rick and Morty when Summer and Rick work out and inject steroids so they can beat up Satan and some Nazis.
Yes. Yeah, bro. Yeah.
Aaron, I know you take a different approach to depicting strong women in your art compared to Michelangelo. We've been collaborating on the Thunder Domesticity series for a few years, and I have to ask, how do you, as an artist, depict strong women?
Well, being that I'm working with photography, a lot of times it starts with angle and the positioning of the subject in the frame, and giving them a distinct presence of power is where I begin. And then lighting comes into play as well in giving good direct and perhaps a harder lighting, one might say. And then the way that the subject is balanced within the background, I think brings in a lot of that play of strength and power within the subject.
One of the many reasons I think your photography is successful is that you treat women and non binary people as gasp people.
That seems kind of a simple thing to me to just interact and treat everybody the same because everybody is the same. And
Yeah.
it's very difficult for a lot of people out there right now.
Yeah, the concept that women are people seems to
Yeah.
escape, unfortunately, many of those who are in power.
Yes.
But with your artwork, your sometimes dramatic angles, that great use of light you incorporate, it really presents your subjects as having agency.
Mm-hmm.
And I really am a big fan of your work, not just because I'm married to you or I sometimes wind up in the photos too, but when you are photographing your subjects, regardless of who they are, regardless of their gender, you do a lot that shows your respect for the people in the pictures, in the artwork.
Yeah, like I said, that just seems like that's just the right way to work. And I don't know, for me, that seems very simple
Hmm.
in the way that one looks at art and looks at life too. So, yeah.
There are so many ways for artists to express the strengths of women, which is why I'm excited about the upcoming Thunder Domesticity Witness Me exhibition.
Ah, yes, yes, that is coming on.
This exhibition will be an outdoor wheat paste installation with artists nationwide, and it's going to open at 7 Center Street,
Mm-hmm.
which I am so thankful that you host this exhibition for us, but it'll open in Vermilion on May 30th, 2025.
May 30th, 2025.
I recently sent out the congratulations notifications to our artists, and the submitted work this year is epic. This is going to be a wonderful show.
Oh, I cannot wait to see it. I'm sure it's going to be just fantastic, and to see what kind of depictions of women we get through this. And yeah, and I just can't wait to print it. It'll be cool.
Yes, it'll be fantastic. And speaking of depictions of women, let's get back to Michelangelo.
Oh, yes, yes. Let's get back to those depictions.
While I'm not overall bothered by Michelangelo's depiction of women in this fresco, I am disappointed by his lack of women.
Yes.
Of course, I need to acknowledge that his source material is partially to blame because this was commissioned by the Pope to depict the apocalypse according to Counter Reformation Catholic beliefs. Plus, the Christian Bible, the Hebrew Bible, and the squad of saints doesn't include very many women at all.
Very true.
However, I spent several hours observing this mural, and you're all going to have to listen to my statistics because I'm in charge and I've gone mad with power. Oh, I should probably do an evil laugh there. I also want to quickly mention that yes, I know that gender isn't always tied to physical bodies, but the gender binary was strong in 16th century Rome. I counted 367 characters in this painting, and there are 7 nude or topless feminine bodies. Then we can add Catherine, who was originally shown undressed, and Mary was the first clearly identifiable, fully clothed woman. So there are 9 women out of 367 figures, which means that 2.4% of the characters are definitively feminine.
That statistic sounds familiar.
Oh, is it because less than 2% of auction sales in the United States was made purchasing art created by women?
Yeah, I think that was pretty much it. Yeah.
To identify the men, I had to do what the Guerrilla Girls refer to as a weenie count when looking at the artwork. Plus, I consoled Niccolò della Casa's engraving, which he copied from the mural prior to censorship. In addition to scouting for dongs, yes, this is a serious art history show.
Oh, yes.
I also included beards and chests that lacked an attached pair of misshapen grapefruit.
Yes, yes.
Therefore, I spotted 86 men in this painting, so that's 23.4% compared to the 2.4% representation of women.
Yes.
That seems kind of fair, doesn't it?
Yeah. Sure. Could you register the sarcasm in my voice?
Next, I expanded my count to include figures that might be women based on how they're dressed compared to confirmed women. I checked for characters wearing long-sleeved tunics with headscarves and searched for people in the Sybil-style tube-top tunics.
Sybil-style tube-top tunics. Wow, say that like 5 times fast. Ouch.
No, I said it once. And those outfits are often paired with hair that's braided with ribbons.
Mm-hmm.
I found 9 other women. So the total is now 18 women out of 367, meaning 4.9% of the characters are likely feminine.
Wow, that's actually getting to be a good statistic.
Is that the Gorilla Girls statistic of how many women artists were in the modern section of the Met?
Probably.
To be fair, I counted the probable men based on their clothing and short hair, and that brought the total for men up to 162, which means that 44.1% of the figures are men.
Mhm.
And there are 9 times as many identifiable men compared to women,
Mhm.
but half the figures aren't obviously gendered.
Yeah,
Many people interpret this to mean all the uncertain characters are men, but I'm not sure.
I could agree with that.
Some Renaissance artists preferred androgynous models, and the only absolute conclusion I can make is that about half of these figures are androgynous.
Hmm.
I understand that I'm viewing this artwork through a 21st century lens, but that's okay. I also understand that the understanding of people who are intersex, non binary, or two spirit was different 500 years ago. But today, I see this artwork as including a lot of people, and it doesn't matter to me if they don't perfectly fit in a cultural gender binary.
Hmm. Yeah, that makes me look at it a little bit more closely on some of that. Huh. Yeah, I like your observation there.
Oh, thank you. In The Last Judgment, Michelangelo depicted Sibyls, who were ancient Greek prophets, and his interpretation made these women look like they could beat the crap out of their enemies, much like the Maenads, which provides us a smooth transition into the Maenad-O-Meter.
Well, they didn't have any body hair, so it's very smooth.
Oh.
Sorry.
The Maenad-O-Meter
Maenad-O-Meter?
is the media metric we use to evaluate doomsday media on a scale of 0 to 5 skulls. Our main goal is to see if the media is inclusive and treats people of marginalized genders with dignity and respect. A low score means the feminine characters were treated poorly, and a high score means the work was inclusive. I also want to note that it's perfectly all right if we disagree.
Definitely.
Do you mind if I share mine first?
Please, please do.
While this isn't my favorite Renaissance painting by a long shot, I'm going to give The Last Judgment 2.5 skulls.
Hmm. That's interesting. Okay.
There aren't very many women in this work of art, but the women Michelangelo painted are badass. Regardless of the artist's intent, the women are equally as strong as the men. Furthermore, I'm going to forgive his weird depiction of breasts because European men were awful at accurately illustrating female anatomy. About half of the people in this fresco are androgynous, which is also why I'm giving it a higher score. If I definitively knew that they were men, I would be less generous. But as far as I can tell, there are over 180 macho David Bowies and airborne Amazons in this mural. Furthermore, this is one of the few works we've reviewed where the women aren't brutalized. While the main character of this painting is the male messiah, the Lady Jessica is floating on a cloud alongside him, and to be fair, I did give Dune 2 skulls. So that's why I want to give it 2.5.
Yes.
Aaron, how would you rate The Last Judgment regarding diversity and its treatment of women?
Actually, I decided just a moment ago to give it the same as you did, 2.5. I was not going to be as generous.
Oh, what were you originally thinking?
Maybe two. I was almost thinking 1.5, maybe 1 3/4. But I really like your observation of the perhaps mystery and androgyny of a large amount of the figures. I was not giving it that much credit in those areas, but I appreciate that observation that you had. And yeah, so 2.5, I think, can work. I find the piece rather comical overall, I do have to say, because I think there was really only one model, maybe two, the exact same body the whole time. And then, yes, it was obviously somebody who had a little bit of a portliness to him, but then, Michelangelo decided to add the ripped abs on top
Like,
of that structure.
so it's like a big guy in one of those silkscreen t-shirts with the muscular torso.
Oh yeah, absolutely. But showing the very strong depiction of women, even though they have the extremely hilarious Nerf attempt at breasts. There were definitely artists who did a much worse job. Anyways, so yes, my final answer is I'll go with the 2.5. I do like that score.
Thank you for sharing, Aaron. When art is displayed publicly, we are supposed to talk about it. I especially enjoy discussing art with my friends, and that's why I'm so lucky to have the Unaccredited College of Klaire community contribute to the show. I usually add up all their ratings and announce the average score, but for the first time, there's a consensus.
Ooh.
Everyone who voted for the Last Judgment gave the work 1 skull.
Wow, 1 skull. Okay.
Aaron, thank you for taking the time to look at The Last Judgment by Michelangelo Buonarroti with me.
Oh, my pleasure. I think I'm going to go find one of those ab cut t-shirts right now.
Or one of those foam muscle suits.
Yes, that would be good. I could almost pull it off.
Okay, if we could get over 360 of our friends to all get muscle bodysuits,
Yes.
we could reenact this painting. Okay, before you can escape back into your darkroom, I have to shamelessly plug your work.
Oh, thank you.
I hope our friends will check out your new Photo Lab number 7 website, and that's spelled FOTOLABNO7.com.
Yes, it is.
Aaron, thank you again for taking the time to look at this colossal fresco with me.
Thank you for letting me see all those butts. Sorry, intergluteal clefts.
It's an astounding work of art.
Assuredly. Sorry.
I shouldn't keep you too long because then you'll get behind on your work.
Oh, well, let's just not get cheeky about this right now, okay? Okay.
This program is part of the Department of Dystopian Studies at the Unaccredited College of Klaire. I swear, it's totally not my academia-themed Patreon page. Don't take my word for it. You can see what all the hubbub is about for yourself by visiting patreon.com/Klaire Lockheart. Because I founded UCK, I get to choose who shall be awarded the Honorary Doctor of Dystopian Studies degree. I'm pleased to announce that Bobby Ford is the current recipient of this honor. Bobby is a multidisciplinary creator who is a champion of artists, rebels, and black sheep. He spent 3 decades as a creative director in the ad game. He's directed and produced short films. He's an actor, a Jedi Master, an author. But you might recognize his voice from the Creative Minds Like Us podcast. If you haven't encountered Bobby's work yet, you need to check him out at bobbyfordstudios.com. That's spelled BOBBYFORDSTUDIOS.com. Welcome to the show, Dr. Bobby Ford.
Doc Bobby is in the house.
I'm so happy you could be here, Doc Bobby.
Yeah.
You have such an incredibly busy schedule, especially with that podcast you're creating. Could you tell us a little bit more about Creative Minds Like Us?
Well, When I decided I wanted to do a podcast, this would be my fourth or fifth over the last decade. And it's kind of like going on a first and second date, but there's just not going to be a third in the previous podcasts. I'm like, no, and I didn't want that to happen again. I really wanted it to be a passion point and something that I care very, very deeply about. I've been a professional creative my entire adult life, as well as, in business and many other things I've done. I've been very active in the performing arts, as you mentioned. So I really wanted to talk to our people. And that's many things. Like the founder of Patagonia is our people. I mean, who builds a billion-dollar business and gives it away to protect the environment? I'll tell you who. Our people. you know?
One of the things that I enjoy about listening to your show is it's like just hearing a pep talk from a friend.
Yeah. I think I'm very intentional on two things. One, slowing things down. So your brain has time to process. Like the biggest comment I get, as a matter of fact, a very touching comment, a professional creative I know on LinkedIn, only through LinkedIn, said, I recently had a traumatic brain injury, and your podcast is like a meditation, and I'm able to process the information because you just take your time with it. So I think that's part of the conversational tone. And as you know from my book, I don't pull any punches. Like I am transparent with, there's no guru here. We're all trying to figure it out. We're all what we are, artists, creatives, visionaries, whatever, however you might classify yourself. We're a hot mess of beautifully brilliant. And,
Ooh, I like that.
yeah. And so that's the tone. Let's be a hot mess of beautifully brilliant together, creative minds like us. So, and it makes me very happy to know you listen, that you dig on the podcast. That's awesome.
Well, thank you so much for joining me, Bobby. You always have a million projects going on, but what I admire about your work is that you are focused on uplifting other creative people too. I want to share with our friends listening that a couple years ago, you sent me a signed copy of your book, Rebels That Break Things, a Black Sheep Manifesto. And I truly enjoy how supportive you are to our community. Your honesty and encouragement is why I want to award you with this honorary degree.
Woo!
Ah, yay!
Grandpa got game.
Instead of making you give a long speech as part of a ceremony, I'm going to ask you 5 quick questions so our friends can learn more about you.
Awesome. Bring them.
First of all, what is one of your favorite post-apocalyptic shows?
That is such an interesting question to me. I remember when we first talked about this topic of post-apocalyptic, and 5 years ago, this would have been funny, aha, cool theme. Now it's more like, holy crap. Yeah, Station 11, which was on HBO Max, really is a masterpiece. I mean, I'm a geek. I'm many, many things. Geek. So from a fun standpoint, although it wasn't very fun, The Last of Us was brilliantly shot and done, no doubt about it. But given the current circumstance we find ourselves in, I think Station 11 was poetic and it was beautiful and it was artistic. And this whole idea of these artists, it's the middle of the apocalypse, people are dying and all the apocalyptic stuff. And rather than grab the audience and shove their face into the ground, this concept was a group of mixed media artists just wandering around the circuit that they would go and perform at all these different areas in this apocalyptic world. And so all the apocalyptic stuff was still there and all the darkness was still there, and yet art rose up. And that's not a little thing with me. I absolutely passionately believe that's one of the biggest reasons I'm a fan of your work is, yes, you are a very, very talented artist, but your art says something. Your art says something. It's a part of a narrative. And I really believe that that's what Station 11 was really saying. James Baldwin's famous quote, artists are here to disturb the peace. And musicians are here to disturb the peace, and writers are here to disturb the peace, and people who just think differently. They don't paint, they don't sculpt, they don't sing. You don't want me to sing because that alone could I just love how Station 11 brought art into the darkness. And I think now we really need that more than any other time in my life.
Thank you for sharing. My next question is, if it turns out that surviving the apocalypse is like summer camp, what role would you play?
Oh, so many my neurons are like, we could, and yes, and maybe, and I don't know. And I don't know your hubby or partner, Aaron, but I get the feeling from some bantering he and I have done that he has some pretty strong alpha in him. And I definitely do as well. I think it's a mix between being the camp counselor, the nurturer, the person that brings everyone together and helps them believe in the art that's going around and the power of the human spirit. But Aaron and I can kill some shit too. I mean, if it comes down to it, lock and load, baby, lock and load. But most of the time, I think I'd be nurturing people and helping them do what they need to do to survive the next day.
I'm afraid the only weaponry we have in the house includes Nerf guns
Nice.
and prop swords.
Nice. One of the funnest games I've ever done in my life, improv had a thing called the Assassin's Game. And you would get an email and say, this is your mark, and it'd be a fellow improviser. And you had to hunt them down in the city of Austin with Nerf guns. And my mark was in the middle of an improv festival, and I had to crawl over a 12, almost 14-foot chain link fence, backpack, Nerf guns in tow, sneak in through the restaurant because the dude was waiting for me to come in through the front door, took him out from behind, and everybody's like, that was so awesome. So, early apocalyptic training, I'm thinking.
We're going to have to update your LinkedIn profile to include Nerf Assassin.
I love it.
My third question is, would you rather fight Jabba the Hutt or Pizza the Hutt?
Oh man, rather in terms of fear, or rather in terms of passion. Comedy, Pizza the Hut, intensity, Jabba the Hutt, Jedis, we don't walk away from fights, and Jabba's got to go down. Jabba's got to end up in the Sarlacc pit. And as it turns out, we learned this through The Mandalorian, some bounty hunters are actually kind of cool. And they have a little Grogu's going with them. So I would love to kill the pizza as comedy, but a Jedi's got to do what a Jedi's got to do.
What supplies should we keep on hand in case society collapses?
Yeah, this is the one area that is a blind spot for me. I would probably die off very quickly because we had some really bad snowstorms a couple of years ago, and then of course the pandemic. And so from that, I always have 5 gallons of water at all times. I have more toilet paper than any human being should own. And I did buy what are called MREs, which are military ready-to-eat kits. They're like green plastic wrap kits. They're not horrible. They're not great. They're not going to win a Michelin star. You're not going to necessarily throw them in the garbage, but I did get 10 of those. Trader Joe's, for those that have a Trader Joe's near them, their canned salmon is actually really good and it lasts until like the end of time. So if the apocalypse lasts longer than 2 weeks, I'm screwed.
Finally, when it feels like the world around us is crumbling, what words of encouragement do you want to share?
Now you're getting to my core purpose. I did a podcast episode 2 or 3 ago, and the name of it is How to Be Fully Alive When the World Has Gone Mad. And I think our resistance is being fully alive. Fully alive as human beings, being fully alive in community. This is an act of community. Being fully alive in our art, in our expression, in our voice, in our words, and the things we say, and refusing to be swept away. As women, as people of color, as however you identify, as fill in the blank. Refusing to be swept away. So how do we refuse to be swept away? we choose to be fully alive, and we help each other. Because there's times it's just friggin' exhausting and give me a bunch of tequila, tacos, and I just don't want to be like, go away. But there are times when we're not doing tacos and pounding tequila where we need to really shepherd and be in a place of community with one another to stay fully alive, passionately alive. That we are creatives, we're artists, we're visionaries. We think differently, we view the world differently. And so let's double down, triple down on that and live fully in that versus, oh my gosh, I'm going to lower the volume. As the song from the 80s, 90s said, whatever it was, pump up the volume, yo.
I appreciate that. Thank you so much for joining us, Doc Bobby.
Oh, yeah. Just for the listeners, I was doing like macho things on the screen. That's it.
Femininity in the Post-Apocalypse was created and edited by me, Klaire Lockheart. If you're curious about what I've been up to in my studio, visit klairelockhart.com, spelled KLAIRELOCKHEART.com. As always, my gratitude goes to Aaron C Packard of Aaron C Packard Productions for providing the voiceover work and my recording equipment. You can find him at aaronpackard.com. That's AARONPACKARD.com. Finally, I have to thank you for joining me. When you listen to this show, you help me feel less isolated. I hope I'm able to keep you company too, and you'll be back to listen to the next episode.